Well, clearly, when we joined the European Economic Community back in the 1970s, then confirmed our position in 1975, it was part of an economic community. That was cooperating with 8 other countries, 9 countries altogether, and it's expanded now to 28 countries. It's become a political union. It's become, for some, an economic union, and for some, it's become a monetary union as well. The clear issue is that we want to trade with Europe, but we don't want the political control. Now, the reality is that the only way we can do that is to leave the European Union, restore our control over our economy, our borders, our whole process of governing our country, so that the rules and regulations are set in the UK Parliament rather than in Brussels. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we're not going to trade with Europe. Of course we will, but we also want to trade with the wider world. And we can trade with the wider world on a tariff-free or an agreed tariff basis far easier as an individual nation than we can as part of this political club that imposes artificial rules and, for example, for India, artificial trade barriers between India and the UK and India and the rest of Europe. So what we can do by leaving is to scrap those controls and make sure that we have a bilateral arrangement which is better for both parties.
And you also said moving away from the EU would bring us closer to the Commonwealth and India.
Indeed. Many countries in the Commonwealth believe that we've turned our backs on them as a part of being far more Eurocentric, as being part of the European Union. I want us to see, and I think most people in this country want to see, reignite those links with our Commonwealth partners, but we're doing it on a cooperation basis, on a partnership basis. As we know, there are 2.2 billion people that live in the wider Commonwealth and actually want to renew those links and revive those links. We've got very strong links with India. Obviously, that's improved, and under the current Indian government, led by Narendra Modi, it's improved even further. But we want those relationships to really have rocket boosters under them, so that relationship can grow and prosper for the mutual benefit of India and the United Kingdom.
But there's also a lot of fear amongst investors and businesses of the volatility that it will lead to if there's a Brexit.
Well, clearly, lots of investors, lots of financial markets like certainty. And of course, there will be a period of uncertainty when we choose to leave. But we have to quickly arrange our trade arrangements, put our economy, our security arrangements. We have to put all those in place. But all that will really change from day one will be that we'll restore the lawmaking powers to Westminster rather than Brussels, which does mean that the British people will know the laws are being made in Westminster rather than this undemocratic body that exists, the European Commission, that we have no control over whatsoever. So the clear issue is for us as British people is to say, look, we'll restore the rules of how we run our country. We'll restore our capability to decide who comes here and who doesn't, and who we trade with and not. So that's what will change. Now, there will be a period of uncertainty, without doubt. There'll be an economic hiccup, but in the long run, it will mean that we'll be able to control our economy by the taxes we impose, by the encouragement that we create for people to invest, and for the opportunity of our market, and for us to market our goods and services throughout the world. So the long-term prospects are greater economic growth. I mean, you only have to look to India to see how that economic growth is possible if you have the will, and we have the will.
But the political top brass, be it the Tories or the Labours, they are all turning a blind eye towards a possible Brexit. They don't believe it is possible at all. So how soon do you think this recovery period will take place if there is a Brexit? It's going to take a while for them to digest that and then spring into action. Meanwhile, the pound will depreciate, the real estate corrections. Is it going to be a really bad phase for investors?
Unfortunately, this is the message that's being put out by the people that want to stay within the European Union. This fear factor of everything's going to be terrible, the economy will crash, the pound will crash. It's nonsense. The reality is that what will happen is that there might be a short-term hiccup for a week or so, but after that, we'll get on to the serious business of, okay, what are our trade relations going to be with India and the rest of the world, including Europe? We have a balance of payments deficit with the European Union. So actually, we can only gain from that as a result of exiting. And the reality is that there'll be a period of calm, and then we'll negotiate our way through this whole process. That's got to be done quickly so we get a stable environment. But the people that forecast doom and despondency are the ones, I'm afraid, that are on the losing end of this argument. What we're saying on the vote leave side is to say, look, there's a brighter future with us controlling our economy, our borders, our security outside of the European Union, and then we'll cooperate. We're not going to suddenly say, oh, we're not going to cooperate with anyone from the European Union. Of course we'll cooperate. We want to trade with them. We want to share resources. We want to share security. But on equal terms, not terms that are not beneficial to the United Kingdom. Equally, we want to expand our relations with the Commonwealth and the wider world. People that we have a natural relationship with, we want to build those relationships stronger, and so people know that actually we want to do business with them and we want to be involved with them, rather than people thinking, are you really more interested in Europe than you are in us? Well, the answer is we're more interested in the people that we know in the Commonwealth than the people in Europe.
In terms of financial capital and human capital, do you see a flight or do you see an investment in the UK after Brexit?
Well, clearly, one of the reasons why we are the jobs capital of Europe is because the government have created a tax environment which is business friendly and tried to reduce wherever possible the rules and regulations to allow businesses to invest in the United Kingdom. We would continue to create that. I think one of the things that would happen is that we'd reduce business taxation to encourage people to come and invest in the United Kingdom, to create jobs, to create wealth, to create the prosperity that we would all wish to see. And we won't be held back by the rules and regulations that Brussels imposes on us. So it will just be the British government in Westminster arguing its case, deciding what rules and regulations are going to be in place, and that will be, we're open for business for the whole world, not limiting ourselves to small numbers of countries within Europe. If European countries want to come and invest here, they'll be very welcome to as well, on the equal basis to the rest of the world.
A Brexit, would that have saved Tata Steel?
Well, there are issues around what has happened. I mean, the China dumping steel on the world markets with the huge subsidies that China puts into the steel industry is totally and utterly unacceptable. However, one of the things that has to be clear, we should remember, is that state aid is not permitted by the European Union. If we're outside the European Union and we choose, as a British government, as British people, to subsidise steel and steel making, if we say we're only going to buy steel from British steelmakers, we can choose to do that. Equally, if we choose to buy from China or somewhere else, we can choose to do that as well. We can impose huge tariff barriers against China if that's what we choose to do. We can choose to ensure that the future of our manufacturing industries is preserved. But it can only be preserved, frankly, outside the European Union, because without that, we can't say to companies in the UK, you should buy British. And we can't restrict who we sell to. It has to be a European-wide basis. And we can't subsidise private industries. We can't subsidise even state industries under the EU rules. We'll be free of all that if we're outside the European Union. And that's got to be a good thing for Tata Steel, for example, and for other companies that choose to invest in the UK.
And what are your views on the India-EU treaty, the free trade treaty?
Well, I mean, clearly, we don't have a free trade treaty between the EU and India.
Do you think it will happen anytime soon? It's taken 8 years.
Well, it's taken 8 years so far. We're nowhere near it being signed. I mean, despite the rumours to the contrary, there's no progress on that. It seems to be India is trying to make progress, but the EU is very, very slow in setting this up, which is one of the reasons why I suspect that the UK and India, particularly with the relationships there are between the two governments. I mean, never a week goes by without a British minister being in India or an Indian minister being in the UK. We've built up that strong relationship now that we can negotiate a trade deal and put that to bed very quickly indeed. We share a common language, we share a common philosophy. I mean, the reality is that we can see our two countries coming together. And there's big incentives on both sides. We're doing trade at the moment. Obviously, the UK is the third biggest investor in India. India is the third biggest investor in the UK. So the relationships are there. All we've got to do is formalise them And actually, I think they'll be very easy, very quick, and something that will be a lot easier for the UK and India to negotiate, possibly, than it will be for the UK and Europe to negotiate. But so I think the people that say, well, this is too difficult, it may be difficult dealing with 28 different countries in the European Union, but for the UK and India, it won't be necessarily easy, but we can do that quickly and for the mutual benefit of both great countries.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.